Hey, what's up you guys, and welcome to ATV. If you guys hear fireworks in the background, it is July 3rd as I'm recording this video, so the neighbors might be popping off a bunch of fireworks in the background, so hear it? So please just ignore that. Soundtracks. Everybody knows what a soundtrack is. A soundtrack is basically a list of songs that compile basically the rhythm of a motion picture. So in today's video, I'm going to be listing my top 10 favorite soundtracks. Oh, this is going to be fun because this is my opinion of my favorite soundtracks, the ones that influenced me. And if you agree with any of the ones I'm about to list, be sure to write it down in the comments below. Number 10, The Crow. This soundtrack really fits the dark, gloomy, and bleak tone of the film. You have tracks from The Cure, Pantera, Nine Inch Nails, Stone Temple Pilots, Medicine's re-recording of Time Baby 2 called Time Baby 3, as well as the beautiful and emotional track It Can't Rain All the Time by Jane Siberi. Amazing track. Amazing soundtrack. Number 9. Urban Cowboy. This movie had a very good soundtrack. You may not know this about me, but I really do like country music. More or less the earlier ones from the 80s and 70s. That's usually my favorite kind of country music. And Urban Cowboy really does give you enough of that. This soundtrack features Jimmy Buffett, Bob Seger, Charlie Daniels Band, Joe Walsh, Mickey Gilley, Ann Murray, the Charlie Daniels Band, and many, many more. Very, very, very good soundtrack. Number 8. Titanic. This movie is extremely sad and depressing, but I don't think it would have had the same impact if it wasn't for the soundtrack. You have this beautiful orchestral music throughout the film, you know, with bagpipes and that lady who goes, oh, you know what I'm talking about. And of course, the song that everybody knows, My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion. Good soundtrack. Number 7, Austin Powers. This movie is a classic. I grew up with this movie, and so did the music that goes along with it. The film takes place in the 60s, and so our ears are blessed with some really great songs from the 60s, like Incense and Peppermints, What the World Needs Now by Burt Bacharach, as well as some really good songs like Carnival by the Cardigans, Call Me by the Mike Flower Pops, BBC by Ming T. All in all, it's just a great album. All the Austin Powers soundtracks have that same tone to them. Very, very, really good songs from the 60s and onward. So yeah, highly recommend that one. Number 6. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This Quentin Tarantino film, much like Austin Powers, is set in the 1960s. This soundtrack makes like an old radio station, and we also get to listen to vintage advertisements in the middle of some of the tracks, which makes for a quite interesting listen, I might add, to an already great film. It's definitely a very cool concept, so I highly recommend you give it a listen. Number 5. The Rocky Horror Picture Show. This soundtrack really needs no introduction. This cult classic is synonymous for its crazy controversial film, also its best-selling soundtrack with songs with Tim Curry, Richard O'Brien, Susan Sarandon, Barry Bostwick, Little Nell, Patricia Quinn, Meatloaf. It's just a very, very fun album. Number 4. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. This soundtrack of a film which is based on the 1967 Beatles album of the same name is highly underrated. And most likely, I feel like not many people know about this movie and or album because it was mostly swept under the rug. It was a flop when it came out. But this soundtrack features so many good musicians. You have the Bee Gees, Peter Frampton, Billy Preston, Alice Cooper, Steve Martin, Aerosmith, Earth, Wind & Fire, and many, many more. All singing great Beatles songs, I believe from Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and Abbey Road, that form the film itself. Number 3. The Blues Brothers. This Saturday Night Live comedy was a super smash hit when it first came out, but the fans of the characters Jake and Elwood Blues wanted more. After releasing a few albums under the name The Blues Brothers, a movie was next in line, obviously, and a soundtrack that would follow that. This soundtrack features songs from John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, James Brown, Ray Charles, Cab Calloway, Aretha Franklin, and many, many more. It's a very great album, and I highly recommend you give it a listen. Number 2, Pulp Fiction. This Tarantino film, as well as my favorite movie of all time, has an amazing list of songs from Dick Dale to his Dale Tones, to Al Green, to Chuck Berry, to Kool and the Gang, and many, many more. Even underrated tracks like If You'll Be a Woman Soon by Urge Overkill, and If Love is a Red Dress, Then Hang Me in Rags by Maria McKee. It's an amazing soundtrack. Highly recommend you give it a listen. It's very good. And finally, number 1. My number 1 favorite soundtrack of all time is without a doubt Saturday Night Fever. One of the best-selling soundtracks of all time, features disco and pop tracks from the Bee Gees, Yvonne Elliman, the Taverns, Kool and the Gang, Casey and the Sunshine Band, and many, many more. It's definitely my favorite soundtrack of all time. It was tough, you know. Pulp Fiction was almost number 1 on this list, but I would say Pulp Fiction and Saturday Night Fever are pretty neck and neck. But yeah, Saturday Night Fever is just slightly better, just because of the nostalgia that it brings back. But yeah, that's my number 1 favorite soundtrack of all time. Well, there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you like it, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and also follow me on my social medias. I'll put them right here, and I will see you guys next time on ATV. Peace.